Welcome to Pitch It To Me podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of Flesh and Blood design. In today's episode, we'll talk about Flesh and Blood's increasingly siloed design, the art of casting, and fab-life balance. You can find us across all socials, such as Blue Sky and Instagram at Pitch It To Me podcast.
I'm Joel.
I'm Fuzzy.
I'm Clark.
I'm Bryce.
What?
That's crazy.
Oh.
Wait, the Bryce of the AGE?
The very same. You guys aren't used to having a fourth name there, are you?
Not all the time. But this is our second guest episode in a row, which feels nice.
We love having people on the pod to talk design with us.
Mm-hmm.
And Bryce Platz, if you didn't know, which you should know who Bryce Platz is. He happens to be the co-owner of Arcane Games and Events, which is the largest independent tournament organizer in all of Fab.
You also have probably been hearing him in a bunch of recent tournaments. He's a hot new commodity on the caster market. He casted Calling Sao Paulo, Calling Kobe, and Calling Kansas City, with more surely to come.
And if you thought that wasn't impressive enough, he's also a very accomplished gamer. He day twos pretty much every tournament he goes to. He's won several PQs, and he's also top 8'd the biggest AGE Open ever, which was over 90 people.
And Bryce, you've also started your own podcast semi-recently called Cardboard and Beyond. You've had guests like Yuki Lee Bender.
Mitch Leslie.
Oh, yeah.
Correct.
And you've also had on Brian Gottlieb, I want to say.
The very same.
Yeah. So, I mean, huge pull.
Yeah.
Huge pull.
Not as huge as Bryce, but still pretty good.
And
Without a doubt. No, I don't mind playing second fiddle to Brian Gottlieb. That's not a bad lot in life.
And if you want to hear Cardboard and Beyond, you can go to the Arcane Games and Events YouTube channel or search on your podcast streaming apps like Apple Podcasts and Spotify for Cardboard and Beyond.
Yeah. Bryce, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This is something I've been looking forward to for quite a while. You definitely put the professionalism in the Flesh and Blood podcast game. Nobody talks about this game like you guys do, and I'm excited to do it with you.
Yeah, and we're just excited to talk with you because we know how committed you are to growing the community. You're always pumping so much energy and like passion into Flesh and Blood, into the players, and you're just an all-around swell guy, and we're so happy to have you on our show.
Thank you so much. That means a lot coming from you guys.
Bryce, can I tell you the moment that I knew I wanted to have you on the show and I knew that you were one of the best people to be a face for Flesh and Blood?
It wasn't when I was shitting on Evan during the last AG.
Hey, that was for me.
Was it?
That was for me.
No, it was when we were all down for the Battle Hardened in San Diego, and our little group that had an Airbnb or a hotel or whatever, we all went out for breakfast, and you came up to us with your child in tow, and you just talked with us about how our tournament has been going and about how everyone was doing, and you were so genuine and open and looking to engage with us when none of us were like big players. None of us were like going to like be on the top 8 of a stream somewhere. But it was the fact that you went out of your way to see people that you knew from the community and spend the time connecting with them. Like, I'm sure you had 1,000,001 things to do that morning, but you still went out of your way to come over and say hello. And that meant a lot. And that's when I'm like, this guy's one of the good ones.
Well, inevitably, the thing that I come back to, well, the thing that keeps me coming back to Flesh and Blood, besides the fact that it's an amazing game, are the people that play it. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be knee deep in things to do for this game. And you guys, especially being AG locals, make you unbelievably special to me. And I think while there is a lot of emphasis put on the mantra, play the game, see the world, it is play the game to feel at home that rings truer for a lot of other players. And that's exactly the goal of AG overall. And the thing that I want to bring to this game, if there's one thing I can do for it, it's that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I gotta ask, just so that our audience gets a little bit of a better idea of who you are, Bryce, what is one of your favorite streamed moments that you've had from recent memory? You can be casting it, or maybe if you were watching a stream that someone else was doing. What is a moment that stands out to you as being like a great moment on stream?
It has to be Eugene C versus Nick Butcher, Reinar Reckless Rampage versus Florian Rotwood Harbinger, and the final couple rounds of Swiss at Calling Kobe. Oh my God. I was sitting next to Charles Dunn. We were casting that remotely from AG Studios. And the genuine reaction from both Charles and I as we watched this unbelievable Mad Lad resolve Sand Sketched Plan out of hand, tutor up Blood Rush Bellows, which is a miss, mind you, because Sand Sketch Plan then requires you to discard a card with 6 or more randomly from your hand. Otherwise, your turn is essentially over. And then proceed to intimidate every card out of Nick Butcher's hand and murder him from north of 20 life.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing can possibly be sweeter, you guys.
Bryce,
I got to be the one yelling over.
I'm so glad you mentioned that play. I remember posting that to our Discord and immediately picking up Reinar as a hero and playing Reinar for like 2 months after that. Like, I remember that exact play.
that play is the moment why we became a Brute podcast.
Because before that, it was 2 Brute podcasters and Fuzzy.
Fuzzy the Ninja player, yeah.
I recently had an opportunity to finally meet Eugene C. in the Flesh and Blood at Kansas City. I walked up to him like I was a little girl going up to a member of NSYNC or something. Pardon for the 90s analogy. That's when I grew up. That's my boy band. I was probably like flop sweating. I was like, Eugene, I have to tell you, I'm such a massive fan. You gave me the best stream moment I've ever had in my entire career, and nothing's gonna ever top it. And I love you so much. He's a really sweet guy. He took it in stride, and we had barbecue that night. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Hell yeah.
So we also want to hear from the audience. What is your favorite streamed moment from recent memory? Go ahead, head into the comments, head into our Discord, and let us know what's your favorite recent streamed moment that made you think, hell yeah, I love this game.
Mm-hmm. Bonus points if it's not anything to do with Enigma. And the CYB Enigma.
And double bonus points if you go wreck or romp on that like and subscribe button if you haven't already.
Amen, brother.
Man. He's such a professional. We don't do that.
We also just hit 400 subscribers, so we're feeling pretty good about that.
That's true.
Yeah.
We could always feel better.
And you can help. All right. Let's talk a little bit about what today's episode is going to look like. So we have Bryce on, and Bryce is a little bit of a Renaissance man in the Fab scene. He does a lot of playing. He does a lot of casting. He owns co-owns Arcane Games at Events, a really big local tournament organizer here in SoCal. And so we're going to take a little bit of time to sort of capture all the different sides of Bryce and how he engages in the game, because
at least 3 of those sides.
At least 3 of those things. So in Red Pitch, we're going to talk about this idea that Bryce has been having for a while about silo creep and how increasingly siloed the game and its designs are getting. Bryce has a great little write-up on that. In Yellow Pitch, we're going to go over the casting and production side of things, where we're going to talk about what makes a good cast, what makes a good stream, and maybe even get into a little bit of what's going on with Worlds this year. And then in Blue Pitch, Joel is going to bring us back down to ground and talk a little bit about the human element, what it means to be someone who's so engaged and a leader in the community while still having to manage and organize other things going on in your life. And then we'll round out with our Arsenal Zone. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our Red Pitch, talking about silo creep.
Yeah, when I was talking to Bryce about having him on our show, I was like, hey, and if there's anything related to design that you really want to talk about, you should let us know, because we love talking about design. And Bryce, would you be willing to read me the little blurb that you typed up for us?
I would be honored, Fuzzy. Here it goes. Okay, here's my pitch it to you. With every new set, LSS is breaking the rules of classes in the game. There's nothing new about this. Just look at the history of Ranger and how different each of those heroes play. But it is getting much more pointed, I would argue. The best example to date is Lyath Goldmane. Guardian is known for sending massive attacks, every single one of them. But Lyath's hero text completely invalidates that playstyle. In his case, the bigger the attack, the more damage you leave on the proverbial table, and thereby the bigger drawback to sending bigger attacks. While this provides the obvious plus of interesting design space in a game that stays fresh, I think the real reason why it's necessary for Fab is that it prevents excessive power creep. Sure, in this case, Guardian's card pool is going to get bigger as part of Super Slam, but I would wager that the majority of the new cards are going to be so specialized for Pleiades and Lyath that the only real improvements to our current Swolgers are going to be the expansion slot cards. In my opinion, this is a trend that will only continue and become more interesting as the game matures. I've definitely got my eye, for example, on the Necromancer class for future sets, since Gravy Bones already operates in a way that is untenable for any non-pirate Necromancer to come, because all allies in the Gravy Bones deck are pirate Necromancer cards.
And when I read that, I felt like, to summarize it in 2 words, I would call it silo creep. I haven't heard that phrase necessarily like from another podcast. It sounds like something that would be talked about in the Flesh and Blood community, and I'm hoping maybe we can be those cool guys that like start the trend, you know? So to give like a couple of definitions, like what do I mean by silo creep? In general, we use the word silo when we're talking about the separation of design elements in the game. Those are the restrictions that lead heroes to play different cards. And that can be formally, such as class division. Like if you're playing a ranger and I'm playing a warrior, we have different card pools. That is a formal restriction on our card pools that leads to us playing different decks, playing different cards. But there's also informal restrictions, like your mechanologist hero might want to make a lot of golden cogs, and my mechanologist hero might want to make hyperdrivers. Therefore, our play styles are going to be different. Our card choices are going to be different, even if we technically have overlapping card pools. Both of those examples fall under the umbrella of silo because there's something separating the card pools or card choices of those heroes. And like Bryce was saying, we're seeing a lot more of that happening, especially in these later designs for sets. When we use the word creep in trading cards, it's talking about how when we see multiple expansions of the game, you know, more cards are being released periodically, we often see trends. I think usually we hear the word power creep. You hear the word power creep potentially even overused when people are talking about design, especially in trading cards.
Oh, it's definitely overused. The amount of people that are like, this is power creep. And I'm like, no, this is pretty in line with other shit that LSS has done.
Yeah, power creep means like that cards are generally getting stronger over time. Newer cards are generally stronger than older cards. Mm-hmm. When I say silo creep, I'm saying that like cards are more segmented and separated over time than they used to be. So I've written it down. I believe silo creep, to coin the term, is a design trend within Flesh and Blood where new expansions have increasingly focused designs and cards are printed to a smaller pool of heroes. Do you guys feel like generally like silo creep is something that exists in the game, especially maybe as I've defined it just now?
I definitely think so, but I was also the person to posit the theory
yeah.
in the first place to Fuzzy. I pitched it to him. So I think my vote has already been cast here.
I know you brought up the example of Lyath Goldmane, great example, and you also kind of connected it to the future of Flesh and Blood, as well as you mentioned like the Necromancer class. If I could take a second just to refer back to what you were saying earlier, I think Lyath Goldmane is an interesting example because in my opinion, with the limited information we have, I think reviled heroes are intentionally different, potentially even like backwards from what a normal hero of that class is supposed to do. I think Lyath Goldmane is supposed to be like a reverse guardian, and our new KO hero is supposed to be like a reverse brute. I don't necessarily think that they're trying to silo those heroes, like that's their main intention, but I do think it's definitely at least a side effect, you know, that like they're definitely extra siloed because of it. But I think they're trying to do something cute with the reviled talent, and that's what's causing them to be so different. That's also like not something I've heard LSS come out and say, so I could be wrong.
I think you're entirely right, because RKO is all about not running 6 powered cards. That's how you get the most out of his hero ability. What I think is when you look at silo creep, you really need to take a big, hefty step back. I think it's not enough to look at any singular set, or even within 1 year. Or I think you really have to be looking at 2 and 3 years out in terms of design space, and look at, has there been an increasing specificity to designs? And one, I think it's interesting because we've received a lot more talent-based sets. So, for example, that's me looking at Hunted of having Chaos and Draconic.
Totally.
That is High Seas having these pirate dual classes, right? That just anytime you have talents as a core element, or introducing a new class, I feel like you are immediately siloing everything to that set, and the cards are being released in that set.
It's kind of funny how having a hero with more text at the bottom does the opposite. It like enables them to run more cards, and it like connects tissue. It connects card pools. But then when you have cards that would normally go in your deck with the same text, that's limiting, right? Because they need to find a hero that can fit all of those pools. It's like the existence of Syndra doesn't silo. It connects Draconic and Ninja. It is the reverse. But the existence of like Draconic Ninja cards, those are for specific heroes. Those are like what keeps everything so focused.
Yeah. But I think we could also generally look at all of the sets over the past 2 to 3 years and ask ourselves, when was the last time they made a general set where we can expect the cards printed to be applicable to a large swath of heroes, not just the heroes printed in that set? There's maybe heavy hitters, and then the other one I'm thinking of is outsiders.
Yeah, I remember writing this down as I was researching this topic. The last 5 sets that we've had, if you count High Seas, have all had talents, And again, High Seas technically hasn't had a talent, but because it has that dual class nature, like Pirate is functionally a talent when we're talking about silo design. And that's the last 5,
also, It's a great point, Fuzzy. And it does make me, just as a side note, hearken my mind back to when we were in the middle of the heavy hitters meta, and there was a lot of discourse around, will there ever be a talented set again?
I remember that. Yeah. It was like, wow, they've gone a long time without really having any new talents. Even like Dusk Till Dawn was the only set over the course of over a year that had any talents at all. And it was just Dusk Till Dawn,
Boy, were we wrong.
Hey, Vincett's finally hitting her stride, right?
Yeah.
So I do agree that it's easy to get caught up in the moment. I think that's kind of what you were saying, Clark, where right now we have had a string of talented sets. If the next one after Super Slam doesn't have any talents in it, we might not be worried about silo creep, quote unquote, at all. It might not be an issue.
But I will say that this does feel very different from the very beginning of the game, where I think it felt like with Arcane Rising, with Welcome to Wraith, and then, yes, we got some talented designs after that, but I think there was always this idea of like every single set gave something for older heroes. I think it did feel a little bit more interconnected set by set as you went along. I think something else that has added to this feeling is watching new heroes, always at least one new hero jump to the top of the meta every single time. Now, again, I think we need to be aware of some recency bias with this, because when Rosetta came out, Viserai became the number 1 deck, despite him not being represented in Rosetta. But Aurora being the number 1 deck immediately following that, Florian being the number 1 deck following Aurora. Then we have now High Seas with Gravy Bones taking over the meta. It definitely gives this idea of like, well, every set, there's going to be somebody who's going to be the best new deck. And that's because the new cards that are printed are stronger and are only for this one hero. But I don't know if that's necessarily correct.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right about that, Clark. I don't think And the reason I think this subject is interesting is not necessarily because it is something we need to be worried about. I think it more kind of hints at the guardrails that have to be up for a development team that is dealing with a card game with a legality policy that is essentially in the legacy format realm of things, right? So any of the heroes that have been the longest standing in the game, thinking of the folks from Welcome to Wraith and Arcane Rising, inherently, whenever we get more heroes of that class, in order to not break the game and, I don't know, unlock potential that should probably be kept in Pandora's box, you do have to kind of put those silo guardrails on a little bit and come up with, you know, a Lyath Goldmane every now and then so that you can continue introducing class support without making it so that a card pool doesn't get out of control and you have, for example, a Starvo situation.
Yeah, we've kind of mentioned it already, but I want to hammer in the safety that comes from, as a designer, siloing all these designs together, especially as the game progresses and there's a larger and larger roster. You want to have designs that aren't going to go back and screw up the balance of these heroes that have existed semi-comfortably for so long. So in some ways, you don't want to print support for older heroes, at least not in a unintentional way. You know, you want to be maybe more intentional about it.
Ozzy's point made me think of the old writer's maxim where you need to limit yourself in a certain respect to unlock creativity, right? So the best writers on Breaking Bad, for example, are talking about writing themselves into a corner and trying to find feasible ways out of it. And I think both for the player base and for the development team at LSS, that's exactly what siloing is supposed to do for us. Lyath Goldmane, for example, I'm going to keep coming back to him because I do think he's the best example of this.
Yeah. Sure.
Is great because he is completely the opposite of what Guardian is normally trying to do. Therefore, he's going to be the first Guardian that actually has like the smallest Guardian card pool, I would argue, even though he's a talented hero. You're probably not going to be running Spinal Crush. You're probably not going to be running Cranial Crush, etc. Right? A lot of those Guardian cards are just inherently bad in Lyath Goldmane. So therefore, we have new and interesting ways to experience classes and therefore leverage some of our old cards, but also find our way into new boxes that we then have to crawl our way out of. Because that's ultimately what humans want, right? We want problems to solve. And if things get too comfy, cozy, and maybe power crept or powerful, they become inherently less interesting.
Well said.
So now I sort of want to open up the conversation. I think we've done a really good job of expressing some of our opinions and outlining like what we think is going on. But now I would like to ask, do we think that this has been healthy for the game? It's been a year and a half now of mostly talented set designs, lots of siloing within the sets, watching these new heroes be strong. Do we think this has been healthy for the game? Or do we think that it has caused unintended consequences that have been poor for the game?
You know, I think there's a give and take to it. I recognize all the reasons why it's important and healthy for the game. But, you know, sometimes I wish that I could take my existing card pool that I've collected over the years and know that those cards are going to help me build a new hero that's coming out later. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wish that like the commons and rares that I've decided to hold on to and not toss into the garbage, like all my draft chaff, I'd hope that those are going to come up later. Or even like the Majestics that I like to play in older heroes, I would hope that they're going to be relevant to newer ones. You know, I want cross-play between the sets, you know? I feel if there was a little bit more of that than there has been in the last year and a half, that feels like it'd be very, I'd be very grateful for it. But I also don't think the game is that suffering that much from the intense siloing that we've seen.
I have to give a political answer in kind because I don't think it is something that is inherently good or bad necessarily even over the last year. Me as a card game player, I do want new and exciting ways to experience the same thing because ultimately, I mean, Flesh and Blood or any TCG is kind of like a roguelike, right? We like doing the same thing over and over again because it's the permutations, the randomness that's involved that changes the experience and adds depth to it. The better we understand the game, the more in depth we get, all of the concepts, the better we can experience it and the better we can perform, right? So siloing from a design perspective does keep the game fresh. I think there's no question about that. To Fuzzy's point, though, about maintaining the worth of your card pool, I think that is a problem. But I think it's a problem to certain classes to a greater degree than others. For example, I also mentioned when I brought up this topic, Ranger. Even though all of the Rangers play a very different play style, I think with the exception of Marlin, all of the Rangers that have come before, Lexi, Riptide, and Azalea, at least after the Outsider set, pretty much had the same commons at their disposal. Even a lot of the Majestics really lined up well with one another. That was probably, I don't know, I would venture to say that you could build an Azalea and a Riptide deck that are 20-ish cards different and yet still have very different play styles. That being said, Fuzzy being a Ninja player, I do not think that there is nearly that level of overlap, especially after the very necessary banning of Bonds of Ancestry when Zen was in the mix. Sure, Katsu could run a lot of the same cards, but he couldn't do it nearly as well. So meta contention kind of siloed him out of the game, despite the fact that the card pools overlapped.
Very well said. And you're so sexy for comparing Flesh and Blood to a roguelike. I really like the comparison. Play like roguelikes. I would say I'm going in a different direction. I'm sort of staking my claim. I don't know.
You mean you're actually having a solid opinion?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think it's healthy for the game. I recently sold out completely out of the Digimon TCG.
Wow.
Number one, to pay for my London trip. That was pretty dope. Number two, because that game, I think Bandai in general, horrendous power creep. So Flesh and Blood, I think, if I can go back to that for a moment, I think is like most of the new heroes have a lot of really solid designs, which make them like quote unquote bad. And then there's like one standout here it's really good. Like they benefit the most from the set. And I think Digimon is the exact opposite, where they get really flavorful designs that are like siloed for like 10% of decks, and everybody else just gets strict Giga Juice upgrades, which made the game really hard to keep up with monetarily speaking. And also like every single set, without any bans, the meta completely shifts. And that gets exhausting as a player. So if I were to see something like that in Flesh and Blood, I would be pretty upset, honestly. And I think the directions that they're taking to make things more siloed and more complex within the talents, instead of just giving them straight up upgrades, is a net positive for Flesh and Blood.
Awesome.
Nice.
I think that about wraps up what I wanted to cover for Red Pitch. Thank you so much, Bryce, for bringing up silo creep. I think it's one of the more important topics in Flesh and Blood design right now. And I'm hoping that we get to talk about it more across our show going forward. So I'm really happy that you brought it up now and got us thinking about it specifically. I think I'm going to hand things off to Clark for Yellow Pitch.
Let's go.
Yeah. So, Bryce.
Clark.
You're really good at this game. Arguably better than me.
Keyword arguably.
I mean, sure, I'm in the top 16 right now, but that's just because I got to play every single week. I think if you got to play every single week, you would have gotten more points than me at the circuit. You're also a great content creator, arguably better than us. I think your interviews are incredible. I think your podcast is great. I love listening to it. Why have you chosen to cast?
So
I like how the implication is he's not a better caster than you.
Look, get me on the mic. That's
crazy. It's interesting. Why casting? It was something that I always wanted to try my hand at. Being a person that works professionally behind the camera. I don't think we've covered that yet. I'm a camera operator in the film industry. But so being that I'm someone behind the camera, a lot of the time there is, I don't know, call it a fantasy, whatever, that creeps up in my mind when I'm watching actors do their work. I recognize craftsmanship. That is one of the things I love about life and understanding other people's occupations in general, the little minutia of how you do things. that's a long-winded way of saying it was something I always wondered if I could do properly. And don't get me wrong, casting is not acting, but it is being in front of the camera and being a personality and giving entertainment to people.
Mm-hmm.
It was something I always wondered if I could do. And this was a very special way to dip my toes into exactly that. And it thereby combined another one of my loves, which is TCGs. It was, however, not something I actively pursued. It was something that was luckily necessary, and there was a hole that I could fill thanks to the fact that AGE is just constantly looking for casters, and it was long before I came on board as an owner and the head caster of the AGE Open Series. So there was basically just an instance early on in AGE Season 2, which I did start out playing in with the intent of trying to make it to the Players' Championship, but the first 2 opens did not go my way. And so I did what I affectionately called O2 Booth, and I went and relieved some of the casters that very much needed breaks when we were at Collector Legion. And I think I pretty naturally fell into an affinity for it, not only just because I enjoyed it, but also because it gave me a brand new perspective on something that I already love very much. Casting a game of Flesh and Blood is very, very different from playing a game of Flesh and Blood. Mm-hmm. The skill sets are widely different. Mm-hmm. That was not something I necessarily suspected, but it is something that I have come to understand. So it's funny, this weird dichotomy. Like, the more I'm casting, honestly, usually the worse I am at the game. And sometimes vice versa. It's just like, now when I am in the booth looking at an overhead shot, there's very little that I miss. And I think I'm pretty good about that, specifically in my role as a play-by-play caster. But I'm missing triggers that I don't think I ever would have when I was actively playing a lot. So it's a lot of give and take. This is a very, very long answer to your question, which is why casting. The short answer to it is it wasn't a conscious choice, but it was something that I just kind of followed and am still following because it is fun and it's leading me to places that I am enjoying. Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to stay open to whatever the universe has to offer for me without getting too metaphysical. And here I am still following it.
Yeah. Wow.
A great thing that you mentioned there is how much you love getting into the minutia of people doing the things that they're good at and how wonderful it is to watch that, right? It's something I felt really come across in your podcast. When you interviewed Brian Gottlieb, I think you were asking more pertinent, relevant questions to the process of developing Flesh and Blood than I've seen any other interviewer do. And similarly with Mitch, you got really deep into casting and the mechanics of casting. So I want to ask you, Bryce, what makes a good caster? What makes a good cast of a Flesh and Blood game?
They're really difficult questions to answer because I don't think they have one good answer. What makes a good caster? I think there are a plethora of ways to make a good caster. We have an incredible talent pool in this game alone. Sam O'Byrne goes off on crazy tangents of like lore fueled young person energy, just vibe spewing every now and then. And that's fun to watch. And he's bringing his acting talent and the way he emotes into the way he casts. That's something that makes Sam a really good caster. Pankaj Bhajwani is just perceptive as all hell. And he also is really respectful of the throw between the play-by-play caster and the color caster, the seat that he's in. He's really good at making it a conversation. Mitch Leslie is just an all-around talent in general.
The GOAT.
The thing that makes him incredible and the thing that draws me to him and the thing that makes me so thankful for in having him as a mentor is that he is a kindred spirit in really loving the craft of what he does. That guy has thought about casting so intently and for more hours than I probably will ever actually have doing it. Like like everything he does is in an attempt to perfect his craft to the best that he possibly can. I'm missing a lot of other names, but the upshot of everything that I'm saying is that there are a lot of ways to make a really good caster, and it does come down to identifying and letting your strengths come to the fore while working on your weaknesses. I think there is anybody who has, a baseline natural talent to put a sentence together and who is comfortable in front of the camera. I think there's a way to make that person into a good caster. And besides that basic floor, the sky's the limit as far as the possibilities go. Honestly, a lot of that also applies to what makes a great game and a great cast of Flesh and Blood, what makes a really good game to watch. I think Flesh and Blood is inherently really good at making compelling games to watch because unlike other games like Magic, the number of complete non-games are very low.
Sure.
In Magic, 2/3 of the games end in a land screw or a land flood. And that's why I left that game, because I didn't feel like I could fly across the world and have an equitable chance of doing well. Games of Flesh and Blood often are ending 1-1. Like, really valuable equipment pieces are coming out to block in the last stretches of the game. One turn cycle turns into a creep into 2 turn cycles where one player is barely surviving, and then all of a sudden they've blocked out enough to carry 2 cards that are going to rip just too many away from the opposing hero.
Oh my God, I can see it.
You know what I mean? Right? Exactly. Like, this happens very naturally in our game. But also, there are situations that are not normally compelling to watch. Blowouts, for example, like in sports, you never want to watch a football game that ends 72-0, right? That eventually becomes boring. Maybe not if that's your team crushing the other one, but if you're, an innocent bystander, you're like, this game's already over. Why am I watching this? But I'm going to allude back to Eugene C. That game was a total blowout in that final turn, but there was so much risk on the line with the specific play line that Eugene chose. So yes, he was rewarded to the 9s, and ultimately he prevented his opponent from playing the game, which is normally not engaging to watch, but he did so in a way that was a do or die moment. He risked everything possible to do the powerful thing. So once again, I'm saying there's a lot of different ways to cut that together, but I think I've given 2 fairly good examples of what you're looking for.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, I loved you highlighting how everyone brings something special to the table when they're a caster, and not everyone is going to love every type of casting. I remember the first time I really started to think about it was an episode of, what was it? Arsenal Pass a long time ago, where one of the hosts was like, man, I want to be like a golf tournament. I want no affect, like straight voice, monotone. Just tell me what's happening in the game. Like, that is
you don't have to say one of the co-hosts. We all know it was Brennan Patrick.
And I was like, wow, I could not imagine a more miserable cast in my life. So yeah, there's a lot of personal taste that goes into it. But in the exact same vein, casters should let a lot of their authenticity shine through. I think also because you guys have to be on the mic for so long. I mean, the tournaments go forever. I mean, when you first show up to cast a big calling, like, what's your call time?
So it's interesting now that they're doing the majority of these streams on delay. The call times are later. So they're usually, I mean, the call times are about an hour after play starts, I would say. We don't go live until about 2 hours after play starts. And that's generally how we slowly silo creep, just kidding, our way to being 1-to-1 live for the last games of the day. Say what you will about whether you like the delay or don't like the delay. What it does from a casting perspective is, yes, it means less total hours where we're at the venue in general. But what it also does is makes it so that there are literally 5 minutes in between when we do the game, do the ad break, and then we're back on. So it is literally nonstop.
That's pretty
8 to
clever.
10 hours of casting.
Yeah, because there can be a lot of dead space on the streams if you're just streaming games live, you know? As a player, there's a lot of dead space between games where you're just waiting for that Oldham player to fucking, you know, block with their last 2 cards in deck. Being able to cut that out, I've never realized that's why they do the delays, you know? That's really smart.
Yeah.
That's exactly why. And so, and I don't think it's a 100% perfect solution, because, for example, if you watch an AGE stream, you'll notice that we don't do the delay, and that is just our choice, namely because my business partner and the founder of AGE, Justin Lewag, really likes the hero building aspect of streams. And so we fill that dead time with longer interviews, a lot of personal, intimate conversations with the people in our local area, especially when they win, and it brings a general hometown feel and a spotlight on people that otherwise don't get it. So
Yeah,
that, you know, there are 2 different ways to approach it in that way. Neither is good, neither is bad.
yeah. Being able to interview players right after they just won a killer game, it's a pretty hype feeling.
Yeah.
I can understand why Justin, you know, plays around that.
I love getting on stream at AGE, specifically because if I win, I get to do that interview.
Yeah.
And those interviews are always so much fun.
Yeah.
That's my goal for 2026. Get on an interview.
Yeah.
To go back to a little of what you were saying as to what makes a good caster, it kind of brings me back to a little piece of advice that I try to remind myself of now and then, which is just to make it your own. You know, you can try to replicate another caster, but ultimately, like, what people like, what is going to lead to you doing the best in a especially like a high personality role like that, is just to put your own energy into it, do whatever feels right to you. And that's what people are going to want to see. You know, you can take inspiration from others, but make it your own, put your own energy into it.
True.
Yeah. Especially because you're on the mic for 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
If you like putting on a mask for that long, it's sure to burn out like the most capable type A person ever.
Yeah.
You have to be able to find an authentic aspect of yourself for your on-screen persona and for your casting. And I think it's going to help people connect to you better. I think it's going to help people connect to the stream better. So I love that you highlighted that every caster brings their own specific element. And then it is finding your strengths and leaning into those and highlighting those and working on your weaknesses, because I think there is a general skill set for a caster. Being able to deliver a point quickly, being able to like end a sentence quickly so that the other person can pick up and get in with what they want to say. I think that's what I would struggle with as a caster. I think I go on like 2 paragraph long tangents. And that's not always good for a stream. Like, it's important that you're able to end it quickly, but that doesn't mean that I don't have strengths in other aspects. So I love that you highlighted that, Bryce, that it's so multifaceted of a role that different people can come at it from different angles.
And you're absolutely right, Clark. And I also want to harken back to the point you just made where, yes, I am being very inclusive in saying that pretty much everybody has something to offer as a caster. And I'll give the caveat that you do need to respect the fundamentals of what you're doing. And that's where the craftsmanship part of it that I am so in love with comes to the fore. For example, as a play-by-play caster, you need to establish the board state, do it quickly, and keep people on track. The goal, one way to achieve it is to think about the person watching at home who is cooking dinner or not having their eyes glued to the screen. I want them to be able to know what the hell is going on in the game, even if they're not looking at it. That is part of my role as a play-by-play caster. In the color role, it is doing exactly what you were talking about, Clark, making your point, making it quickly, and not going on 2-minute long tirades, because you're right, that is not good for a stream. What we want to see in that regard is a conversational attitude between both casters. And that's where understanding when a caster is throwing to their co-caster and being there to pick it up. I'll give another special mention to Pankaj Bhajwani. I finally got a chance to cast with him. It was over Discord, but literally every time I was done saying something, he was there with an interesting point ready to go.
Hell yeah.
And when you're a color caster in in that regard, I think about it like having random access memory. You are constantly thinking of something interesting to say if my play-by-play caster stops talking right now, and then once that moment is gone, forget it, find a new one. You're constantly ready, constantly rolling and deleting everything that is coming in, or an image that is coming in your mind.
Yeah, gnarly.
And you just mentioned something that really highlighted a different perspective for me with casting. You're almost a camera operator when you cast. You're just pointing the camera at different parts of the game. Are you going to highlight whether or not this is the turn where the Gravy player is going to activate their Mage Master boots? Is that the right time to do it within the theory of the game? You're trying to put yourself into the brains of the players and construct narratives to fill that time where the player goes into the tank. And so you're sort of moving the camera around the board and into their hands to highlight different elements of what's happening in the game. I don't know. I never really thought of that before.
No, and it's an interesting perspective. I haven't thought about it that way, but in the film industry, one of the most painstaking things we do as camera people and as cinematographers is we agonize about where should the camera be in order to tell this story. There's a million different places you can put the camera in any particular scene, but the one that you highlight is going to be the one that's in the movie. And if it doesn't say what you're trying to get across, then maybe your entire story falls apart. So the way that applies to casting is, do I spend 5 minutes here talking about the equipment suite, or do I not? Because it looks like every single Slippy loadout I have ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm. All right. I think that's everything I have for Yellow Pitch. Lots of great conversation. Thank you so much for giving us all of your insight, Bryce. I don't think there are many people in the scene that could provide the level of context that you do on that topic. With all that being said, I am going to now pass the mic over to Joel for our Blue Pitch.
Yeah. So for Blue Pitch, I want to sort of contextualize how much I respect Bryce for his level of discipline and his ambition for the game and life itself. I have spent a little bit more personal time with him outside of Flesh and Blood. Like, I went to a climbing gym with him a few times and spent some really good time with him. And that group of friends. He has forearms like fucking tree trunks, man. He is one of the strongest people I know.
Do you also climb, Bryce?
Me? Yeah. I do. Although,
like, everybody fucking climbs.
Yeah. And he is a fucking monster.
Thanks, Joel. I miss those days, man. I haven't. I have to admit, I've revoked my membership because it's really hard to go with a 17-month-old.
Yeah,
that time will change. I cannot wait until I can start climbing with my child. That's going to be.
Oh yeah, dude.
That's going to be when my heart soars out of my chest from elation. But for now, the forearms are deflating a little bit. I'm excited to report.
What were you climbing, like V5s, V6s?
He was warming up with those.
No. By the time I ended, I would say I could very consistently send V5s. Damn. I have sent a V7, and V6s were my project zone.
Damn.
Anyone who knows about climbing knows that's fucking...
That is tough, bro.
Yeah, that's big.
Clark, do you know about climbing?
No, but I know enough that V5... I know a V7 is kind of fucking cracked.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Like, I have friends who climb, and they're like, oh yeah, V4s are like really, really tough for me. So I'm like, V fucking 7? Shit.
Yeah. So
just the one. That's my token V7.
So yeah, that's how I have been spending more time with Bryce outside of Fab. But he also brought up a really good point that he, has been recently went from a Fab Chad to a Fab Dad. Mm-hmm. And I remember asking him his perspective on that transition of his life and, his priority shifting and stuff like that. I wanted to bring it up again because, as we've talked about already in this podcast, he's had a pretty explosive career after having his child enter his life. So I just wanted to highlight that he's also like a really strong competitor. And Bryce, if you could maybe talk a little bit about that experience and how it prioritized your life differently and how you've rediscovered your zest for Flesh and Blood while being a good father and all that stuff.
There's a lot of nuance to it. And I grapple with it every day still because it is, the deeper I go into this, the the content creator, the caster, the tournament organizer side of things, the more I kind of follow the path that the universe has opened for me, the harder it becomes to engage with the thing that I originally set out to engage with, which is the card game itself. So the hardest thing about all of it is not being able to devote more hours to actually playing the game, to having to sit out on play sessions that the team is having, to not participate in these AGE opens or the callings that I'm casting, so on and so forth. But inherently, that was always going to become harder when my baby was born, because there's not as much time for hobbies and extracurricular activities. That's just the way it is. And that's part of the difficulty in becoming a parent, especially for my wife and I. It's just there's literally no time. But I think there is inherent power in that too. Anybody who's ever had a deadline in front of them knows that things take as long as they take. And what I mean by that is whatever set deadline, as long as you respect it, whatever that set deadline is, you will accomplish your task in that set deadline. Obviously, I'm not saying you can't go out and conquer Russia tomorrow. That's an unrealistic deadline. But for example, Rachel Stoddard, Max Ferocity, who I had on my podcast as my most recent guest, she accomplishes some of the most complex cosplays Flesh and Blood has to offer in 4-week time spans, because LSS says, hey, we want Pleiades at Singapore, and this is when it happens. Can you make it happen? And she is that steadfast of a person where she sets that as a deadline and puts her mind to it. It doesn't matter that she has a 60-hour work week job. She gets the thing done. All that to say, I think that time management actually you become better at time management when it becomes an imperative. When the risk of not figuring out the proper amount of time to do something is that you don't get to do the thing you care about anymore, then it becomes a lot more real, and you just get better at it out of necessity.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So yeah, I think a lot has become a lot harder. Engaging with the game has become a lot harder. Setting aside time for other things that I care about outside the game, and also work, has become harder. I mean, I have to be there, for example, for like the Players Championship, and for, like calling events are scheduled out many months in advance. So I can't take freelance work when it comes up, and that's a pain point for me. But nevertheless, it's taught me a lot about myself. It has brought me and my wife a lot closer, because we are navigating, even though we've been together for like 16 years, we're navigating a much more difficult situation and trying to get each other what we need, and also advocate for ourselves, which is something you just don't really have to learn how to do unless time becomes this limited resource. So I have no idea if I'm answering this question in any
this is great,
feasible, understandable way, but it's been a journey. It's been painful, but it's also been really enlightening. And when I look back on where I've come from in the fab world, and also just where I am personally since I've had my kid and I've learned to navigate all that, I'm really proud of it. And I just want to keep going and keep learning and keep challenging myself.
Yeah, Wolf said, and I don't think you answered it like incorrectly or by any stretch of the imagination. Your perspective is very unique. Myself, even, like, I don't have any kids, and that's something that I probably will consider at some point in the future. And of course, the number one thing you think about, when will I have time to do stuff that I enjoy, and that context of a real world example like yourself, and someone who's been successful at navigating the new, like, growing pains of being a parent and also being an entrepreneur and just excelling in your own career, is really impressive. And I think that's context that a lot of people could use if they've ever had any doubts about doing one or the other.
Yeah, I feel I'm in a semi-similar situation, Bryce. I'm not having a kid, but I don't want to necessarily compare the joy and sheer emotional weight of experience that comes from bringing a child into this earth, but I'm looking towards the next year, 2 years of my life, and I just started my teaching credential program. I'm not sure if I've talked about this on the pod yet, but I'm going to be a lot busier over the next couple months because I'm basically going back to school. So I'm going to be not only like working full time for a few months out of the next year, but also going to school full time. And
that full time, part time.
I'm pretty committed to this podcast, but then like, what does that leave me for hobbies and Flesh and Blood, And, I like this podcast, and part of that means I have to play the game, like how can I not play the game, but yet still deliver like relevant and interesting topics, like I have to walk the walk. So there's a lot to juggle, my schedule just tends to do that where I'll do nothing but this podcast and my Flesh and Blood, and then I'll be doing lots and lots at other times. And I've also been in situations like you were saying, Bryce, where, when your schedule gets that packed and you have so much going on, you learn to kind of fight for the things that are really important and make a point of going to them. And all the mindless, like, I feel like I have less time for doom scrolling and, playing the mindless games on my computer that I like. But if I don't have time for them, I'm really okay not playing them, like dropping the more meaningless stuff. And suddenly it's like all meaningful stuff all the time. And it's definitely a shift, but it can be really rewarding.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Some of the things that you hold on to for a long time fall away when there is not idle time for them because they were never that important in the first place. And I think it just, for me personally, it took a lot of painstaking, I guess, noticing, understanding the things that were actually important to me and giving them value simply because they were important to me, not because they were generating any amount of, production in terms of money, in terms of, investing in my family's future and stuff. Inherently, when you show up for yourself, you can show up better for others. And so
absolutely,
in the context of my family, it's definitely shown me that taking care of myself in certain respects, it obviously not being selfish with my time, but showing up for myself is the best thing that I can do in order to make life easier and better for them.
Damn.
And if I could alienate our audience for just a little bit, I also feel like it changes a bit as a content creator because Flesh and Blood is a hobby, right? Ultimately, the most important things in life are probably not Flesh and Blood. You and the three of us are in a little bit of a different situation where we feel like we have a little bit of an obligation to our audience to continue producing the show. And also, like, the algorithm rewards you if you keep doing it regularly and if you keep producing the same thing, like maintaining your brand, maintaining like the project. So there's a little bit of a pressure to keep doing something that extends beyond just, are you enjoying it? And I'm okay with that. I signed up for that, I think for other players, if they find themselves really busy, it should be really okay to step away from the game for a while and come back to it later, Flesh and Blood tends to give people a little bit of that FOMO feeling, where if I go away for a while and come back, I'm going to have to relearn the game all over again because I'm already doing that as an active player. I have to constantly learn the game and there's more matchups to learn, new heroes being released that are so different than the previous heroes of the past. So it's something to juggle, but I think people shouldn't be afraid to decide, is Flesh and Blood meaningful enough to the point where I need to prioritize it above other things? Because that answer could be no, and that's totally okay,
All right. And now at this point, we've talked about like our different ways that we restructure our life to advocate for ourselves or just include things that, may not be super important to our day to day, but, help us feel human. So I want to ask you, Bryce, what are the parts of FAD that you like the most or that you like to do the most with your limited time? And it doesn't have to be like what you do most often, just like what you value the most or what gives you the most joy.
It changes a lot. And I think it often coincides where I see a new frontier, or I see, honestly, where I see discomfort, where I am putting myself in that box and finding creative ways through it, where I'm discovering things about myself, and which basically often amounts to where is the most pain, unfortunately. So right now, Joel, the answer is my podcast. I do a lot of research on my subjects. I want them to feel within the first 5 to 10 minutes that we're recording that I know them on a far deeper level than they have come to expect when they're doing appearances on podcasts and other Flesh and Blood content. When I can do that, it knocks down the door in a way that I think is unexplored in this game. And every time it happens with one of my subjects, it's a feeling that keeps me coming back for more. I don't have any idle time, but I'm using that 2 hours that my son is napping each day to scroll all the way through Rachel Stoddard's Twitter, to watch every obscure podcast that she's ever been. I'm finding them in a timestamp that is super useful in unlocking that door. And just coming from it in that same genuine perspective that Clark detected in me when I saw you guys for breakfast at San Diego. That's exactly, I feel that way about the people I engage with in this game, and I want it to come through in no uncertain terms. And so that feeling is the thing that I care most about right now in my relationship with this game.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I think you do a great job as an interviewer. So having a form of media where you get to do only that, I'm sure is very gratifying for you and an interesting new challenge. But I also want to ask you a follow-up question before we get too far into the weeds. And not like I know your master plan at life or anything. Have gone from like player to producer and caster. So I'm curious, what were some of the things that you maybe saw in the fab content sphere that you think was missing? And, if any of that drove you to make your podcast, or if there is some other underlying reason that maybe we're not privy to?
I think the thing that I saw was missing, namely in regards to the podcast sphere, were unapologetically intimate conversations with the biggest people in Flesh and Blood.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start out trying to make a podcast. In fact, it made my eyes roll when I had the thought, because I was like,
yeah.
There's one thing Flesh and Blood does not. Oh my God. But I really saw a niche there, and it all started when I interviewed Brian Gottlieb. When he agreed to have an interview with us, it was just something we wanted to do for a lark, and because Justin and I thought that we could put together something that was better than anything else that had been out there. I value so much, in general, the forward-facing philosophy that LSS has with its community, how willing they are to go out and speak to the public. Brian especially is just, I don't know how he has the hours in the day in order to do it, in order to make all these random podcast appearances, but he does it. And so it was so important to me to show him that I valued it by making the most of my time with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I set out to do was exactly what I talked about with, for example, Rachel Stoddard. I wanted to knock down the door. One of the things I did in that interview was I quoted him from a really obscure Magic podcast from many years previous, where I think his quote was, "One day I want to fuck off into the sunset and you guys will never see me again," whatever it was. But it, like, one of the tools I was employing there was I wanted to say, "Hey, Brian, like, you're here and you're giving me this time, and I did my homework and I know you."
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the things I felt like I was missing, specifically in regards to podcasts, with interviewees as a subject. I do a lot of feature-length documentaries in my work in the film industry. So I've sat and listened for 16 hours at a time, some of the best interviewers that exist. This is obviously a very different skill set because a lot of time their voice is cut out of it, but I took a lot of inspiration from that. And it was another one of those things where the more I watched it and the more I saw the craft behind it, the more I wanted to see if I could do it. So I think the question was, what did I think was missing? What is the thing that I thought I could, help the content community with? Ultimately, it's that.
Yeah, a great perspective. I think the recurring theme here is, like, you've done a very good job, at least I feel, of taking your real world experience through your day job and applying it to a hobby that you love and sort of carving space for yourself to grow more embedded in the community and offer like really good value to people. Like, you know, you've seen actors do their thing and their craft, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I can do that, and you fucking succeeded. And same thing with the interviewees. You've seen documentaries being made from scratch, and now you go off and do something similar to Flesh and Blood in a really like high value way that a lot of people can get, you know, good insight about who you're interviewing.
I appreciate that. I still think I have so much more to give and so much more to improve upon. I'm really passionate about wanting to be the absolute best caster, the absolute best interviewer that I possibly can be for this game. And I don't think I'm done yet. I think I want to keep working at it. There's still things that I'm really wanting to make better. I want to achieve perfection if I can, but if I keep climbing that mountain until my tenure in this space is done, then so be it.
Damn. Well, I'm sure everyone listening now is excited to see what you come up with next. But I think with that, I think that's all my time in the blue pitch. But thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about you personally, Bryce. It was, you know, always good to get to know you a little bit more. And obviously, you know, hearing about where people come from is something that I enjoy too, is like, how did you get started in these spaces? But I think we're going to go off to the Arsenal Zone now.
Bryce, have you heard of this? The Arsenal Zone?
The Arsenal Zone.
The Arsenal Zone.
I tend to think that there is a hero in Flesh and Blood that tends to play with two of them, and I like to play that hero.
Oh, that's why you like the LL format.
In our podcast, the Arsenal Zone is the section of our show where we all shout out a card that we've been thinking about lately for whatever reason we want.
Yeah, it can be a card that we love, a card that we hate, a card that we hate to love, a card that we love to hate, or perhaps even a card.
Mm-hmm.
That part.
How about I go first? Question mark.
Well, no, Fuzzy, because you see, even though we have Bryce here with us today, we need to pay the tax man.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shame on me. Shame on me. Mea culpa. We have to shout out a card from our Patreon subscribers. It is our job. We're literally paid to do it.
That's true. We're on the payroll.
We've gone to the spreadsheet. We've rolled the proverbial dice, and we've selected Whippy!
Thank you, Whippy!
Man, it is content creator city for today's episode. Whippy, also content creator from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great guy. Early fan of the pod. Appreciate him a lot.
Oh, yeah.
The card that he has selected for the Arsenal Zone today is Take the Bait.
Take the Bait. It's a 0-cost, red pitch, block 3, Riptide specialization. It's a non-attack ranger action. Search your deck for a card, then shuffle and put it on top. Create a bait token under an opponent's control. We should probably mention the bait token here, right, guys?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Bait. It is a ranger token aura. It has 0 power, no block value. You cannot play or activate cards you own. Action. Destroy this when the chain link resolves. Attack. Once per turn, attack reaction, 0 cost. This gets +1 and go again.
So you can play Take the Bait to tutor a card to go on the top of your deck, as well as give your opponent a bait token. And while your opponent has the bait token, they can't do anything except attack with the bait token. And it has an attack reaction that gives it +1 and go again. So you're giving your opponent a free attack for 1 that they have to play before they play any other cards, which does activate a lot of Riptide's traps.
All of them, actually.
And it has a tutor.
Yeah. What did Whippy have to say about this card?
Yeah, so Whippy said, it should be no surprise to anyone that all I've been thinking about is Take the Bait. There's so many interesting layers to this card. It can be used as a fatigue tool, an aggro tool, a way to use a different build entirely with Sandscour Greatbow. You can use it with inertia to grab a card and use it this turn, essentially. But ultimately, regardless of how much I love the card, its flavor, art, the effect, everything about it being spectacular for a Riptide, I think the card is kind of just okay, quote unquote, for the current state of the game, and a 2 of in the deck at best. Discussion around it has taught me a lot about how players value cards in this game, and that my mindset is a bit warped. Because from conversations around the card, it seems like it ultimately ends up being negative value, or between 1 to 2 points of value in and against most decks. That's not what I expected to hear from Whippy, to be honest. I think it's a pretty measured response, but I expected more hype from Whippy since he's been such a big Riptide fan.
I think mathematically, as a red card, I think he's right. It doesn't quite provide enough mathematical value for what Riptide is looking to do.
Absolutely.
But I think it acts on such a different axis. Like, yes, it turns on all the traps, and that's where everyone's mind is first going to go. But I kind of love the little ways it can unlock other play lines. Like he mentioned the Sandscour Great Bow, but also like Codex of Inertia, where you can end up taking the card that you just tutored, put it into your arsenal, and give yourself a Ponder token, and then punish the opponent for maybe not being able to resolve all the cards in hand. So if they're like, well, I don't want to activate your trap, so I'm just going to like attack for 1 and pass.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, Inertia, get rid of your whole 4 or 5 card hand, whatever you got. And that can be pretty debilitating. I kind of love the different ways of attacking the hand and how the opponent is trying to play out their turn.
So the one thing that I want to point out about this card that excites me more than anything, because I have a good amount of experience with Riptide, all builds, not as much as executive producer Talon. Nobody has enough money for that.
Thank you for that tidbit.
But I see this card as a way to effectively run the most powerful traps that Riptide has access to in all matchups. I'm looking at you, Spike Pit Trap.
Oh, yeah.
The closest thing that Riptide can do to Kano Math. And if he can do that against every single class, lest they be time warped, it's pretty sick. Also, shout out to Blood Rot Trap as well. I'm thinking of running a one-of copy of that bad boy into an aggro matchup, or a matchup where I just need to leak a little bit more damage over the line, and being able to play that and give my opponent a Blood Rot could be really handy in certain situations.
Sure. All right. Thank you so much, Whippy, for shouting out a card. And if you want to hear us talk about whatever card you want, you can join our Patreon for $5 or more.
Or just get a correct prediction about Super Slam. This is probably the last episode that's coming out before spoiler season starts in full. So if you have any big predictions for Super Slam, get them in now, and you could win a free month of our Patreon.
That's true.
For the month of October.
So head on down to our Discord for free. Get your predictions in. We want to hear them.
And that's the only place you can get spoilers for this spoiler season. Don't forget that. Cool.
All right. And now each of us are going to shout out a card, and then we'll finish off with Bryce and the card that he selected. I think I'll go first.
Sure.
Cool.
So I have a tradition on this show where I always bring a copy of the card that I'm shouting out, and I sign a copy and give it to each of my fellow recording buddies. Because Bryce is here, he's going to get a copy too.
I'm so freaking excited for this segment.
You get a fuzzy signed card.
And whenever we have a guest on, especially one as high caliber as Bryce, I like to make sure that it's a majestic that's not bulk. A majestic that's not bulk.
I wish this was recorded.
Now, I'm not saying it's like high value. As a matter of fact, I was looking through my stuff and I had a playset of a card and I price checked it. I'm like, $18. I'm not giving out an $18 card. So the card that I'm shouting out today is Eradicate.
Ooh.
That's a hit. I'll take it.
That's solid.
Eradicate is a 1-cost, 4-attack, 3-block, yellow pitch, assassin attack action card with Contract. You are contracted to banish opponent's yellow cards, and whenever you complete this contract, create a silver token. When this hits a hero, banish the top X cards of their deck, where X is the damage dealt by Eradicate. We were able to talk about this one on the show. Oh, actually, in an episode we haven't released yet.
Yeah, one of our banked episodes.
And the fun part about this card is its upper limits are very high. You put a few pumps on this card, maybe even attack reactions that aren't like revealed to your opponent before you do them, you could banish half their deck if you had a really good turn.
Oh, yeah.
And if they weren't blocking. And it's interesting how every point of damage adds to the on hit, right? It's a scaling dynamic on hit, which is not something we see a lot of in this game, partially because they're hard to design around.
Yeah, what are we boking?
Like, imagine if they put like a real effect that affected like tempo on this card instead of just the top of deck. Like, what are you going to do about that? Like, on hit, create that many might tokens? It would be crazy, right?
I don't know. Visit the Gold Main Estate exists.
And that card's crazy. So I love Eradicate. Ever since I've seen it, it was always one of my favorite contract cards, even if it's not one of the most powerful.
Fantastic.
Did you guys have anything to say about Eradicate?
Well, I was going to ask Bryce, what do you think about Eradicate? And are you thinking about picking up Arachne Huntsman now that we're getting this new contract defense reaction?
I'll answer the second part of your question first here, Clark. No. Arachne Huntsman. That being said, Eradicate, Fuzzy, has ruined my day at Armory more times than one.
Really?
Yeah, when Arachne Huntsman first crashed on the scene, and pretty much every new expansion slot card, I do have locals. And let me tell you, Eradicate is a must block when Arachne Huntsman is trying to take you to the fatigue race. There were many times when I was playing a fully powered Lexi Liveware, and I would 100% get fatigued out because of on hits like Eradicate.
Oh, yeah.
Down to my last power turn. They send an Eradicate, and I say, well, if this turn does not kill him, then and I let this hit, I have literally no deck left. It's a rock and a hard place kind of card. So I honestly think it's the power card in the Arachne Huntsman playstyle as it stands right now.
Anyway, I'll have to give you this card next time I see you, Bryce. But Clark, Joel, here's one for you and one for you.
Thank you, Fuzzy. Absolute
thank
worst.
you, Fuzzy.
Absolute
Why
worst.
didn't anybody tell me?
You want to do it again, Bryce?
Dude, that looks fire, Fuzzy. I cannot wait.
My signature is not good, and that's part of the fun.
All right, who's next, Fuzzy?
It's Clark.
Me. All right, I'll be nice and quick about this one. The card that I am shouting out today is Reaping Blade. So I was doing a little bit of testing of Florian because if I remember correctly, Florian had a pretty good assassin matchup with like 9+ D reacts. But I hate perma-blocking and then grasp reaping and perma-blocking, grasp reaping.
You don't get a little dopamine hit with the value you get after that one card hand?
No. Don't get me wrong. I like doing it. When it's the only thing that I'm doing, I don't want to play Flesh and Blood. I want to walk away. And so I hope that Reaping Blade gets banned.
Ooh.
Like, I just want them to be like, we're tired of designing Rune Blades around this hyper-efficient 1-for-3 weapon and actually let Rune Blade weapons matter again. Because I don't like defaulting to Reaping Blade for nearly every single hero in every single meta.
I've never wanted Clark so bad until right now.
What if I told you, Clark, that you could have a Rune Blade weapon that cost 1 and swung for 2? But if you've played an attack and a non-attack action card, it also deals 2 arcane.
Holy shit, that's
Yo, put it in the pipeline, Brian, right now.
It's like somehow less toxic because you have to play cards to do it, right? You know? But also way more toxic.
Yes, but actually no. But that's my card. It's something I've been thinking about. And like, I don't mind the super grindy, full block throw hammer, but like, as a Victor player, I've been in a lot of games where that's just the correct way to play, and they are the most miserable games to me. I want to be playing my cards to progress a game state that makes me feel like I am engaging with my opponent, and perma-blocking and then throwing hammer is, even when that hammer is a really cool, grasp, make 2 rune chance, come in with these cool breakpoints, it just doesn't do it for me in the same way that other play patterns do.
Sure.
So that's my card. Joel, what about you? What card do you have?
So my card is Sigil of Solace. which is a 0 cost generic instant at red, gains you 3 life and goes yellow and blue for 2 and 1 life.
Amazing.
And the reason why I'm shouting out this card is because I was thinking about the call to action that you posed earlier, Clark, which was when was your favorite streamed moment or cast moment. And mine is definitely at PTLA when I forget the person's name. I apologize, but the Dromai player versus the Dorinthia player,
Arthur Trehay.
Yeah, Arthur Trehay. Yeah, where he played
Maximilian Klein.
Yeah, exactly. Where he played a Sink Below and literally drew the singular out in his deck, which is a Sigil of Solace, to survive the last dominated axe swing and subsequently win the Pro Tour off that play. And I remember watching it, and oh my god, the stream was electric at that point. Like Mitch Leslie was the one who was like, popping off at the helm of the casting booth, and it was such a cool moment. And I remember asking Mitch, or telling Mitch, like, "You're the fucking go. Only you could do that." I was just like, he's one of the best casters out there. And I remember him telling me, he was like, honestly, anybody could have delivered in that moment, but I'm really glad it was me. It was such a cool moment to be a part of. And I mean, I'm a big fan of Mitch. I like his humility and his personality. He's just a really cool guy. So when I think about casting, I always think about him. He's one of my favorite casters out in the realm, other than Bryce, of course.
That Sigil moment though is like, one of these days, I think like in the next couple of years, we'll get like best fab cast compilation,
and that's on there,
and that it's gonna be one of the top ones easily,
for sure.
Though I do think your cast of the Eugene Sand Sketch Plan grabbing Blood Rush Bellow is also definitely one of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had no idea what was going on. I forgot what said Sand Sketch Plan does. So that's why I say the reaction was genuine. I was reading the card and then being like, did he put a Blood Rush Bellows in his hand? What a maniac! Because Charles and I were like doing the equivalent of 2 rune chants and a Reaping Blade kind of line with that. We were like, oh, he's going to put Beast Within in there, try to hit the 25 out of the 1 in 3 chance or whatever, and then both freaked out. It was a lot of fun. Little known fact about the Sigil moment, though. Brian Gottlieb was squeezing Mitch's hand when he saw the Sigil of Solace.
That's too funny. Oh my god.
It's so funny to hear both of them retell that story too, because Brian tells it like it's this magical moment. He's like, I couldn't believe it. I grabbed Mitch's hand. Like, it was so amazing. And Mitch was like, the guy grabbed my hand.
Oh my god, that's funny. See, best Flesh and Blood moment for a few reasons.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, that's my card. More like a moment, but yeah, Sigil of Solace, everyone.
Mm-hmm. So now that you've heard what's top of our minds, Bryce, what card do you want to shout out today? What card have you been thinking about lately?
Okay, so I have been thinking one of the more exciting spaces in Flesh and Blood right now for me is Project Blue. I've never been a commoner fan, but for whatever reason, the weird hype they had around Project Blue, what is it? What's going on? And just hearing about it on Blue Sky and stuff got me thinking. And once I heard about the restrictions, I was like, oh, okay, this is a format I could potentially get behind. And so for that reason, the card that I want to shout out is Snapshot. It is an elemental ranger arrow attack in red. It's in all 3 colors. It is 0 cost. It comes in red, yellow, and blue. It comes in for 4, 3, and 2 respectively based on the colors. It has lightning fusion. If you fuse this with a lightning card when you attack with it, you may activate a bow you control an additional time this turn at instant speed. This card is incredibly near and dear to my heart because it was the build around card for my first ever competitive deck in Flesh and Blood, and that was a Lexi Lightning Death Dealer build that I played in Blitz at Odyssey Games. At the time, my favorite heel in the game, Evan Bridges, put a Blitz deck together for me out of the blue when I wasn't even there, left it at Odyssey, and left it there for me to pick up. And I goldfished that deck out of control because I thought it was so awesome because of this card. When you pair this card with Death Dealer, whenever you lightning fuse it, you are able to activate Death Dealer at instant speed, which because Death Dealer has Go Again written on it.
Yeah, wait, hold on a minute. This gets you an action point?
Yeah.
Yup. And allows you to load another arrow and draw another card.
Holy
shit. Yeah. I had a build around for this card where essentially I ran Art of War when that was legal. A good smattering of good generic attacks like Plunder Run when it was still around. And I would basically just try to go super wide. And at one of my first armories, I absolutely decimated a Kasai player with like the highest rolly turn that I've ever done. Double Art of War, couple snapshots, finish off with an arrow. Hey, what the heck? Let's throw a snatch in there as well. And it pairs incredibly well in super fast paced game states with Lexi because you also have access to a piece of equipment called Honing Hood, where you basically try to go second. You activate Honing Hood on your opponent's turn. You try to get an Electrify into your arsenal because Electrify is a 1-cost non-attack action that happens to be lightning. So you flip that with Lexi on your turn. You give your next attack Go Again. You play out Electrify, which essentially is a 3-damage boom grenade in the red for the remainder of the turn. It draws a card for you if it's played from Arsenal. It just gets stupid really, really fast. And if you can chain together those snapshots, you're drawing a billion cards. And when I first got into this game, the one thing I knew from my days in TCGs is that draw cards equals good. So
Yep.
I have a Project Blue build. It's coming back and it's taking names. Yeah, there's so much more to explore. It's fertile ground for sure. And since my days playing it in Blitz, there have been all of these kind of like siloed expansions that have been coming out for not necessarily Elemental Ranger, but for Lightning and also, specific Ranger looking at you outsiders. So there's so much more for me to access in regards to this kind of fringe, but really fun build that got me into the game.
Awesome.
Yeah. Fantastic show.
I think we're about at the end of our podcast, folks.
No. I was having so much fun.
There's no fifth host, unfortunately.
Let's go all night.
Well, it's been so fun to have you on, Bryce. Remember, audience, we want to know, what is your favorite memory from a stream or a casted game that you saw recently? Let us know those hype moments that make the game fun and interesting. And do we have anything else that we want to ask Bryce before we log off?
Yeah, where can people find you if they want to interact with you more?
I am chained to a radiator in the basement of the AGE YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. That's Arcane Games and Events on YouTube. That's where we put up every single event that we stream. We've got another one coming up this Saturday, August 30th, which is probably going to be after this podcast goes up. So if you missed it, sucks to be you. But also, we've got Players Championships on the horizon. That's also... The AGE YouTube channel is also where you can find my podcast, Cardboard and Beyond. I'm also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And furthermore, you can find me casting on the Fab TCG YouTube channel here and there as well.
And our very own Clark Moore qualified for the AGE Players Championship for the Los Angeles side. So make sure you tune in. That way you can cheer him on. Yeah, Clark. Swing that hammer.
I would just make 2 rune chants, swing reaping. I was really worried about Pitch It To Me podcast this year, but Clark comes through and gets our token representation in there.
Clark the Clutch.
That shred still makes me so fucking sad.
But we got there.
We got there. With all that being said, I think we are going to go ahead and sign off then. Right. One last time, Bryce, thank you so much for joining us.
What a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a really fun time.
Until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by Joel Recinos, Clark Moore, and Fuzzy Delp. Our executive producer is Talon Stradley. Our logistics coordinator is John Farkas. Music is produced by Dillon Hulse. Logo is designed by Hanvi, and our sound mixing is done by Christopher Moore. Last but not least, thank you, the listener, for taking the time to listen to our podcast. Be sure to give us a follow on your favorite social media